Hello and welcome to part 2 of the Predictive Analytics series on 2014 Indian elections presented by Fuzzy Logics. I am Joydeep Das, Chief Strategy Officer at Fuzzy Logics, and with me I have Partha Sen, CEO of Fuzzy Logics. As many of you may recall from part 1 of this series, we went through various methodologies that we can use, scientific, to predict the Indian election, especially around the complexities that you have with a multi-party democracy like India. What we're going to do today is recap some of that, but more importantly, go in depth state by state and see how those methods can be applied and what kind of predictions can we expect. And Partha is actually going to not only go state by state, but also demonstrate through various what-if analysis the nuances that can come through around that. Partha, with that, I'll let you get started.
Hello and namaste. I'm glad to be here, and I hope that you have watched the first episode. In this episode, as Joydeep mentioned, we are going to perform the forecast for several states, and hope you find this exciting. We are also going to do several what-if analysis and take you through state-by-state analysis. And again, we will have some discussion about the different states, and again, hope you find this interesting. But before we get started with the forecast, just a recap of the methodology. Joydeep, I know that in part 1, we did talk about this, but I just wanted to do a recap. So
Absolutely.
We are going to use raking or iterative proportional fitting. That's the methodology, the statistical methodology that we will apply. Now, in order to get the vote shares, we are going to use the average of the opinion polls, the various opinion polls that are available. So you have several opinion polls that are making the rounds, NDTV, you have CNN, IBN, you have India Today. So we are going to take the results from those opinion polls, the vote share. We are not going to take the results, but we are going to actually use the vote share from each of those opinion polls and then average them out. We are also going to take into account the pre-poll alliances that have been reached between various political parties in various states. And as I have explained in part 1 of this series, we are going to perform this analysis at a state level, meaning we are going to go state by state and then aggregate those results to come up with the All India forecast.
And as you had mentioned in part 1 as well, and just for our viewers' sake, essentially what Partha is going to do is also show you all of these characteristics as they play out state by state, because as in India, because of the huge diversity between the states and variances, there are lots of nuances that you will get to see as they are explained through the course of this presentation.
And also, lastly but not the least, as I have mentioned in the previous episode, we want to be transparent about the methodology, and we want to be transparent about how we are actually arriving at these forecasts, and we want you to appreciate this methodology. At some point, this whole forecasting tool is actually going to be available on our website, so people can actually go and play with it themselves. The way we are actually going to structure this is that there are lots of states that we have to cover. So in part 2, we are going to cover the following states: Assam, Chhattisgarh, Gujarat, my state, most important one, Jharkhand, Karnataka, Kerala, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Odisha, Punjab, Rajasthan, and West Bengal.
And could you give us some color on the basis for selecting these states versus others? Because in India, obviously, there are lots of states, but there's some basis for selecting these states.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I want to set the process in motion, and I want to keep the suspense for part 3.
Okay.
So in part 3, you see, I have selected Andhra Pradesh. Andhra Pradesh is going to be bifurcated into 2 states, Simandhra and Telangana. Bihar, there is some tectonic shift that is being witnessed. Nitish Kumar actually walked out of his alliance with NDA after a lot of years, and apparently he's at the receiving end of it now. Haryana, it's a small state, but I think that the Aam Aadmi Party is actually contesting elections there. It's in the neighborhood of New Delhi. So we want to see what is the effect.
Right.
Tamil Nadu, this time in Tamil Nadu, AIADMK, the DMK, and the Congress are actually contesting on their own. There is no alliance between them, or any three of them. Incidentally, the BJP has put up an alliance with the smaller parties, the PMK, the DMDK, and the MDMK. So that is interesting to watch. What is the effect of that smaller alliance vis-a-vis these other well-established parties, the DMK and the ADMK? Delhi, obviously, the up factor, we want to analyze the effect of the Aam Aadmi Party. And lastly, but not the least, Uttar Pradesh, because I know everybody wants to know what is going to be the projection for Uttar Pradesh, because that's sort of a state where any political party who wants to form the government in Delhi wants to win a significant number of seats. And the state actually has 80 seats. So we are going to hold it till the end, and hopefully our audience is going to wait for us to conclude part 2, and then wait for us to present the forecast for part 3. And then at the end of part 3, we will have an all India forecast.
So it seems like what we are going to cover today will be a good demonstration of the methodology that we explained last time, but in the context of states that do not necessarily have those nuances that other states have, that we can study further in the part 3.
Yeah, now one thing I wanted to actually also mention here, which I missed, is that the smaller states like, for example, Uttaranchal with 5 seats, Himachal Pradesh with 4 seats, Goa with 2 seats, we are not covering them. We'll provide a forecast in our blog, and then obviously the northeastern states, we are not going to cover them, but we'll provide the analysis in a blog, and then we will show the consolidated effect of our forecasts in these states in our All India forecast.
And for our viewers, you can also read our blog at fuzzyl.com. We have some of the analysis in written form from Partha in the blogs, and we will also put up some of the analysis tools there.
Sure. So without much ado, let us move to our forecast. So this is the forecast for Assam, the northeastern state of Assam, with 14 seats. But before I go into the forecast and the sensitivity analysis, I want to actually spend a little bit of time to show the different components of this forecast and how we should be looking at these results. So here we have the state along with the number of seats. And then we have the various political parties or the alliances, Assam Gana Parishad, the BJP, the Congress, and the others, independents and others. And then the blue lanes here, this is for 2009. So you have 2009, the vote share and the seats. And then we have this sort of orange or red swim lanes. That is for the vote share, seats and gains and losses for 2014. These are the projections for 2014.
And the gains and losses are vis-a-vis 2009.
Yeah, the gains and losses obviously have to be with respect to 2009. And then we have a what if section, which is where we are going to perform the sensitivity analysis. So if the vote share of a given political party is going to be 17% vis-a-vis 13%, then what is going to be the impact? So these 3 sections, and then for the viewers, as we have specified, we are basing our vote shares on opinion polls. So here in this case, there is only one opinion poll for this state, the NDTV opinion poll, and we have taken the numbers. Now we have taken the opinion polls that are only after March. So because things change, it's
Yes.
dynamic, and it doesn't make sense to take opinion polls from January or February of this year. If you look at the opinion polls, by the way, there has been significant shift, or there has been some changes, and we obviously do not want to base our results on stale opinion polls.
So it's current, and as you said, it's also based on average, but it is an average only if there are opinion polls available for that state that are multiple opinion
well,
polls.
the average, it's still the average. In theory, it is still the average, but it is the same number as.
Yeah.
Okay, so in Assam, what we are witnessing here is that AGP had 1 seat in the outgoing parliament, and they are actually scoring 0. So there will net loss of 1 seat. The BJP actually holds on to its 4 seats, and the Congress actually gains 2. So it goes from 7 to 9%. And in terms of vote shares, we have 13% for AGP here, 18% for BJP, and Congress is 36%.
So I want our viewers to pay attention to the fact that the projections for 2014 in the middle lane, as Partha explained, are based on this raking methodology that we talked about in part 1. And that's the focus that we want you to have versus 2009.
Yeah, sure. So let's go to our next state, which is Chhattisgarh. So Chhattisgarh has 11 seats. Mm-hmm. And again, we have only one opinion poll, BJP 44% and the Congress 38%. And look what is happening. The BJP, by the way, is projected to lose 1 seat in Chhattisgarh. So it goes from 10 to 9, and then the Congress actually gains 1 with 37% of the votes. Now, in Chhattisgarh, by the way, the BJP and the Congress have been neck and neck. If you look at the past several elections, they have actually been neck and neck. So I'd like to do some sensitivity analysis here and see if the difference between them is to be lesser than what these opinion polls are suggesting. Then what happens? So we have 44% for BJP and 38% for the Congress. That makes it a net difference of 6%. So let's say that.
So basically, what you're saying is, as you explained in the previous state, so you have the 2009 results which you projected for 2014. In this particular case, you're also going to explain what happens if some of the variables change.
That's correct.
What are the possibilities?
That's correct.
Okay.
So, because look, this is based on an opinion poll, and opinion polls are going to have a margin of error. So it is quite possible the BJP, instead of getting 44%, gets 42%, and the Congress, instead of getting 38%, gets 40%. So what happens in that case? So if that were to be true, then we are looking at 6 seats for BJP and 5 seats for Congress. Now, instead, let's say if we were to have 43% for BJP and 39% for the Congress, thus giving BJP an advantage of 4%, then the results will be slightly different, and the BJP is going to get 7 seats and the Congress is going to get 4 seats. You see some in some states the results are going to be quite sensitive to the voting percentage, the final voting percentages for each of these political parties. So
but basically, for the electorate system that we have in India, these percentages can significantly alter the seat balance, and thus the fortunes of whichever party is getting those seats.
That's right.
And as it varies from state to state, the matter gets even more complex because each state is so different from each other.
So while you were talking, I actually pulled up Gujarat. Now, in Gujarat, you see that there are 2 opinion polls, CNN-IBN projecting 55% for BJP and 49% for 49% for BJP from NDTV. Now, incidentally, the CNN-IBN is projecting 31% for Congress, whereas NDTV is projecting 41%. So here, in the first case, the differential is 14% between BJP and the Congress, whereas in the second case, the differential is 8%. Now, if you look at these projections, if you take the average of these 2 projections, Congress is facing a complete rout in Gujarat. So all the 26 seats are projected to be won by the BJP based on these projections. Now, what happens if, let's say, so this is the most optimistic scenario for the BJP. If they get any more than 52%, they're not going to increase their share of seats.
And also the 52%, 36%, and the 12% is based on the average of these 2.
That is correct.
And that's what you're applying.
That is correct. So now let us say that if we were to accept the numbers from NDTV as more representative, and I'm not saying they are, but just in case. We put 49% for BJP and 41% for the Congress. In that case, what happens? So we do a what if, And now what we are looking at is 22 seats for BJP and 4 seats for Congress. So
significant change.
Yeah, well, I mean, Congress is winning 4 seats by narrowing the vote share, but they are still facing a rout in Gujarat.
That's true.
So let's look at the next forecast here, which is for my state, Jharkhand. And in Jharkhand, the BJP or the NDA has done relatively well in the last election. They actually had won 8 seats. There are 14 seats in the state. And the UPA had won 3, whereas the others had actually, independents and others had won 3. Again, we have only one opinion poll to rely on here, which actually gives 8% advantage to the BJP. And this, look what it converts to. So the BJP is actually going to pick up 2 seats. And Congress is also actually picking up 1 seat. From 3, it goes up to 4. And the others, there's a net loss here. There are no winners from this others category. So this is -3. Now, one thing is that this is UPA, this is not Congress. So in Jharkhand, by the way, the Congress is in alliance with the RJD, the Rashtriya Janata Dal, and the Jharkhand Mukti Morcha. So maybe having this alliance is actually working in their favor. So let's look at the...
So Partha, just for the viewers' interest in the sensitivity part, what you have shown so far has been that in certain cases, even if you change the percentages of the voter share, the changes do not necessarily affect the outcome. I mean, there is some change to the seat allocation, but the overall outcome doesn't change. Are there scenarios that you're going to show where small changes make a big difference and large changes do not make much of a difference?
Yeah, I think that this is the next example. We are actually going to see the Nataka in Karnataka. So Karnataka actually went to polls on the 17th, and there are 2 opinion polls for which we have results available. We have CNN IBN projecting 36% for BJP and 46% for Congress. On the other hand, we have a neck-and-neck race projected by the NDTV. So again, we take the average. Now, when we take the average, it's a big loss for the BJP in Karnataka. So they go from 19 seats to 7 seats. Whereas Congress gains from 6 seats, it goes up to 20 seats, so net gain of 14. So now, this begs the question, if we were to actually perform this analysis based on individual opinion polls, then what happens? Now, let's try doing this. We have a 5% gap in vote share. So we are actually going to reduce this from 5% to 3%. So we actually give 1% more votes to BJP, and we give 1% less votes to the Congress. And so now the net differential is 3%. So what happens now? So now the number of seats still remain the same. But if, let us say, I were to actually increase this to the BJP's vote share to 40% and Congress's, I were to reduce it to 39%, now we are seeing dramatic changes. So now we have 16 for the BJP and 11 for the Congress. Now let's do this. 39%, 40%, it's quite possible that both of them get 40%. So let's try doing that. So now, again,
it switches back.
You have Congress getting more seats. So, in Karnataka, it's sort of difficult. Even a 1% vote swing actually is resulting in, like a difference of 6-7 seats.
It's a very sensitive scenario there.
Yeah, and I think that is the whole point about doing sensitivity analysis. If you do not perform the sensitivity analysis, then it is really hard to understand the impact of vote shares on a given political party in a given state.
Yes. And the basis for such a large sensitivity in the case of Karnataka, how would you explain that?
It's a close races. I think there are close races. I think that BJP did extremely well in the last elections. I think that there have been a lot since the last elections. And I think that people who have actually been watching Karnataka, they will actually acknowledge that there are some races that are extremely close, and that is being manifested in this sensitivity analysis.
So in fact, this was the point that you made in part one about these close races not being able to predict it by those cube law and other such methods, whereas with raking, you are being able to analyze this.
Well, I mean, again, you cannot predict. For example, a close race in Bangalore is Bangalore South, where the five-time MP Anant Kumar is pitted against Nandan Nilekani, the ex-CEO of Infosys.
Infosys, yeah.
By all accounts, it's a close race. Now, can we predict for sure who is going to win it? We don't think we can. But at least we can understand the sensitivity of how much of a vote swing is going to, influence the result in one way or the other. So another state where traditionally a small swing has resulted in a large change in the number of seats is Kerala. So now, if you look at the two projections, we have CNN IBN giving 36% to LDF and 45% to UDF. On the other hand, NDTV is roughly even between LDF and UDF. BJP, by the way, is getting 10% vote share here, but is unable to open its account in Kerala, according to our projections. LDF had 4 seats, and now they are projected by the averages. If we were to take the average of 36 and 45, we have 41% for the LDF, and that would net them 12 seats in Kerala. That's a net gain of 8. On the other hand, if we take the average for UDF, they actually had 38% votes. Look, last time the differential was 10%.
10%.
And they want 16 out of 20. Now the vote share actually, the margin actually decreases between them. They actually, even with higher vote share, they're only winning 8 seats. So one of the things that points out to when you actually win less seats with higher vote share, that means that in the past elections that there have been some seats where you have actually won by very large margins.
Very large margins, yeah.
So those you will still win, but I think that on the fringes where you have tight contest, you are going to end up losing those.
And so how would you explain that 10% is still a significant number and not resulting in any seats at all for BJP, for example?
Well, I mean, again, you have to take into account like what they are doing vis-a-vis the others. It is possible that with 10% votes, or maybe even with 5% votes, you could win a couple of seats. But that will only happen if you have very small pockets of influence. So if, let us say, you have a very strong pocket of influence in 1 or 2 constituencies, then you could have 5% votes and you could win both the seats. But on the other hand, if it is quite diffused, which is what I think is happening in the context of Kerala, I think that BJP is contesting all the seats in Kerala. I may be wrong, but I think that's what's happening. And I think that does not get them past the post.
So would this be an example of a scenario where there are these nuances state by state that affects a 10% getting some seat or not getting a seat, or would this just be a common phenomenon you would see across many states because of the pockets?
There will be some nuances. There absolutely will be some nuances, and you have to take those into account. I think that when we talk about Tamil Nadu tomorrow, I think that there are pockets of influence of the smaller parties, and they have, that's going to have an impact. Similarly, if you look at, states like Chhattisgarh, or on the contrary, if you look at states like Chhattisgarh or Gujarat, where you have primarily 2 parties, the BJP and the Congress, there's not much that you can do if you actually going to score 10%. Let's say the third party that actually scores 10%, I think that, it's not much you can do. However, if you are very strong in 1 seat or 2 seats, then, it's possible that you can actually get through.
Makes sense.
Okay. So let's talk about Madhya Pradesh. So Madhya Pradesh is interesting. This is actually based on the opinion polls. It's actually projecting a complete rout for the Congress.
I think another thing, while you're coming to Madhya Pradesh, one of the more important states in terms of size and population, is for our viewers to know that, as Partha was highlighting earlier, that from state to state, you of course have these variances. But as you will see in this chart here, as he's changing from state to state, even the composition of the whole chart changes, because there are certain parties completely missing or new parties being added. And that just shows again the necessity for your model to take into account state by state aspects of this projections before you project on a nationwide.
That's true. That's absolutely true. So you have to actually account for which are the dominant alliances and things of that nature. So normally in this type of analysis, what we do is when we look at the past results, we how do we determine whether we should be taking into account a party in a given state or not? So the rule that we have applied is that if a party has actually polled at least 2% votes in a given state in the past election, then we account for it in this analysis. Otherwise, we combine it with the others.
Other category,
right?
Yes, yeah, makes sense.
And again, this 2% is not arbitrary. We have actually looked at the data from the past, and the 2% actually looks reasonable based on scientific analysis of the past elections.
So that's the threshold.
Yeah, so that is the threshold. So in Madhya Pradesh, the averages are stating that between Congress and BJP, there is an 18% gap. Now, that obviously explains why Congress is getting completely routed. So they had 12 seats in the outgoing parliament, and now they are down to 1. So now let's say here is something that Madhya Pradesh, by the way, you have Madhav Scindia, who is contesting from Gwalior, never lost, and so strong in his constituency. You also have Kamal Nath from Chhindwara. That's also a pretty strong constituency for the Congress. So let's what we want to do is instead of actually, I may be wrong. Maybe it is possible that Chhindwara is in Chhattisgarh. So someone can look it up and let me know. So let's say that instead of 51%, they get 49%, and I'm actually going to increase Congress's vote share to 35%. So let's see what happens here. So so they get 3 seats. Now let's say we reduce it even more. Let's say we get them down to get BJP down to 47%, and we increase Congress's vote share to 37%. So let's see what happens now. So now Congress gets 5 seats. So
the thing to note for our viewers also is that when you do change some of these numbers from between 1 cell or 2 cells, what it takes the numbers, the rest of the numbers from others and not from each other, just so that it is because sometimes it is people might wonder whether it's being taken from BSP in this case when you didn't touch BSP.
No, I did not touch BSP. So the BSP is the result for BSP is not going to be actually altered. Okay. So Madhya Pradesh. So now Maharashtra. Maharashtra is again interesting here because there are 2 opinion polls. Now this is one state where I found that both the opinion polls are actually converging. So you have 43% for the NDA. NDA, by the way, in Maharashtra consists of BJP and the Shiv Sena. And I think they also have an alliance with Ramdas Athwale's Republican Party. So they have an alliance there. And the UPA also has an alliance. Congress has an alliance with Sharad Pawar's NCP, the Nationalist Congress Party. So interestingly, both the opinion polls are actually converging to the same numbers. And so there's not much of an averaging going on here. And based on these numbers, out of 48 seats, NDA is projected to win 38. They had actually won 20 last time, so they're actually having a net gain of 18, whereas the UPA is actually going from 25 seats to 10 seats. This is a net loss of 15 seats. Now, again, in the context of Maharashtra, it is interesting because here the NDA is actually winning a lion's share of the seats. So if we were to actually increase the or decrease the votes polled by NDA by 1%, let us say, and increase it for the UPA for 1%, so thus decreasing the margin between them, what happens? So still BJP is on a very strong wicket here. I think that they are really doing well in this state. Let's do one more thing. Let us do 41% here and 35%, and
yeah, it holds steady.
Yeah,
it holds steady.
Pretty steady. So given that the opinion polls are actually suggesting a 10% gap, for that gap to be shrinking to 6% seems pretty unlikely. Now, if that were the case, I think that BJP is or the NDA is on a very strong wicket in Maharashtra.
So in contrast to Karnataka, where you showed the small change showing significant swings,
yeah.
In this case, we are seeing that the small change actually holds steady.
Right.
Does that indicate how versatile the model is in terms of being able to do sensitivity analysis at various levels? And does it also show its ability to look at wide range of scenarios?
Well, I mean, whatever model you have or whatever methodology you use, end of the day, if a model that you use for forecasting from different states, from different years, it has to be robust. Mm-hmm. I cannot possibly have a model and not be able to perform a sensitivity analysis to the level that I'm doing here and have any degree of confidence in that model.
Absolutely.
So let's go to the next state, that is in the east, Odisha. So Odisha, we have Biju Janata Dal, the BJP, and the BJP. Now, the BJP's vote share, based on these projections from the opinion polls. So we have two opinion polls again, 44% to BJD from the CNN IBN and 34% by NDTV. The BJP's vote shares by both of these opinion polls are relatively stable at 30%. And the Congress 16% from CNN IBN and 26% from NDTV. So Odisha is interesting. Naveen Patnaik actually had an alliance with the BJP in 2004, and then he walked out of that alliance. And he has been the chief minister of the state for quite a while. On the other hand, BJP seems to be gaining in Odisha. So with 31% votes, and if we were to take the average, then the projection that we have is 14 seats for the BJD and 7 seats for the BJP. And the Congress actually draws in null here. Okay. So again, the interesting thing is that if we were to perform some sensitivity analysis, so we have quite a bit of divergence here, right? Mm-hmm. So we have 44, 31, 16. 34, 30, 26. So let's try to do what-if analysis with both these scenarios. So we have 44% for BJD, 31 for BJP, and 16% for Congress. So let's try to do a what-if analysis. And so we have 18 seats for the BJD and 3 for the BJP. So this is interesting, actually. From 14 they go up to 18, and BJP actually surrenders those 4 to the BJD, and that you can account for because of the difference in the vote share. So there's a 30% difference.
Yeah, the 31% shouldn't be misleading because the other party has actually gained significantly more.
Yes. So so what you have gained is important, but it's only in the context of what you have gained relative to the
other side, yeah.
So 34% for the BJD, 30% for BJP, and 26% for the Congress based on the NDTV opinion poll. So let's see what happens here. So if I were to believe NDTV, then I think that BJP is actually coming in at 9 seats. So that's almost like
narrows the gap.
It's like almost half of 21 seats. The Congress obviously gains one here. So, but one thing for sure is that if we were to believe these opinion polls, there is a tectonic shift that is happening in Orissa, which is that the BJP is actually becoming the principal opposition party.
Yeah.
And then we actually go to Rajasthan. So Rajasthan, again, two opinion polls. There's a little bit of divergence between the two opinion polls, 55% from CNN IBN to BJP and 48% from NDTV, and then 32 and 35. So the net difference between them is here in the first case is 23% actually, and in the second case it's 13%.
13%.
So I mean, it's still significant.
Significant,
Still significant. So let's try to put 55% as CNN is projecting, and 32% for Congress, and let's see what happens. So Congress draws a blank. On the other hand, if you put 48% and 35%, still only 4 seats. So again, this it's not good news for Congress in Rajasthan. And you know, Rajasthan recently had assembly elections, and Congress actually faced a complete rout. So I think the trends from the assembly elections are actually continuing. Now, one state I actually forgot was Punjab in the alphabetic order. So let's go back to Punjab. So in Punjab, we have even Stevens, NDA, which is the BJP in coalition with the Shiromani Akali Dal and UPA, 45 and 44. Now, if we were to actually project this in terms of seats, 7 for the NDA and 6 for the UPA. So here it will be interesting to actually perform a what-if analysis. So if we were to put 44% for NDA and 45% for UPA, then what happens? So now we have 6
reverse, yeah.
So switches. So that's interesting again. So then we go to your state, West Bengal. So in West Bengal, Mamata Banerjee's Trinamool Congress, they actually unseated the left after 34 years. And the question is whether she has been able to consolidate. In the last Lok Sabha elections, the Trinamool Congress actually won 9, and the left, which is the CPIM, the CPI, the Forward Bloc, the RSP, they won a total of 15. Now, 2009 was one of the worst years for the left in West Bengal. Now, the question is, what happens now? So we have 3 opinion polls actually. Some divergence in terms of the percentage of votes for Trinamool Congress. Congress is relatively steady in all these 3 opinion polls. The left is also relatively steady. The difference we see here is the percentage that they are attributing to BJP versus the Trinamool Congress. So 39% of the votes going to Trinamool Congress, 14% to BJP, 15% to Congress, and 24% to the left. Congress actually keeps its seats. They actually gain 1. And then Trinamool Congress actually goes from 19 to 26 seats, a gain of 7. And the left actually is losing 9 seats. Now, this is where I think that we should really be doing some sensitivity analysis. And let's say that Trinamool Congress, let's take the India Today opinion poll, and let's reduce Trinamool Congress vote share to 35. Let's put 19% for BJP, 16% for Congress, and 23% for the left front. So let's see what happens. So Trinamool actually is intact. Trinamool actually is intact with 25 seats. The left actually wins 2 seats, and the Congress actually takes 10. Now, this is interesting here. You talked about earlier, the fact that can you have 10% votes and win 2 seats or 3 seats? And this is what we see in West Bengal, 15% of the votes, but they are actually winning 7 seats. Now, mind it, in the last elections in West Bengal, the Trinamool Congress was actually in an alliance with the Congress. But in West Bengal, there are certain pockets of influence of the Congress. So in the Malda and Murshidabad areas, they have some dominance. So they're expected to actually do well in those places.
And with the sensitivity, actually, it even shows even more dramatic change. 15% to 16% is actually giving them from 7 to 10 seats. So
yeah, I think that that's possible. That is entirely possible, because then what is happening is that they have strengths in certain areas, and if Trinamool were to get less votes, and the BJP is actually getting is going from 16% to 19%. So the 3 or 4 way fragmentation of votes, the Congress could actually come out ahead.
Oh, yeah.
So I hope that the analysis that we showed in part 2 was meaningful, and look forward to part 3, where we are actually going to talk about some of the more interesting states, or rather I should say the states that people are watching very closely.
I think this has been fascinating. More importantly, we could actually see the application of this model on a state-by-state basis, not just for projections for 2014, but also what-if analysis on each of these cases, which demonstrated high sensitivity and low sensitivity, and various reasons for that. And that also gives us an idea of how different each state is in India, and the importance of applying this model on a state-by-state basis before you project on a nationwide. So this has been really, really interesting.
Well, the interactivity and the sensitivity analysis is very much a part of it, and this is something that I think that I have wanted to do for some time in the context of multi-party democracies. And I think that with the advent of modern software and high-performance computing, it's possible.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for this session. I hope you enjoyed it, and we look forward to you seeing the part 3 of this predictive analytics series on the 2014 elections in India. Thank you.
Thank you.